This week on Q&A, our guest is Indiana Republican Governor Mitch Daniels.
Governor Mitch Daniels of Indiana, what's the toughest part about your job?
Oh, I think at the moment it's worrying about folks who are out of work or vulnerable to that. Our state's been hit suddenly and hard, and trying to make certain we're doing right by them while protecting taxpayers at the same time. But the difficulty of the job and its chores shifts from year to year, sometimes month to month.
What was the best training for the job with all the political jobs you had in the past?
It wouldn't have been any of the political jobs. The best training I had was the years I spent in business, trying to learn how to help other people do their best work in large numbers, manage or lead a complex organization for results, and keep an eye on the every dollar. I would say by far that was the best preparation I had.
You ran an ad I want to show in your campaign, and I'm going to ask you about it when we get back.
Whatever your outlook on politics, here's some good news. This is the last time you'll have to watch me in an ad like this. See, governor's the only office I've run for or ever will. I have no ambition except the one we started with, to tackle Indiana's problems head on and leave a better place to our kids and theirs. We'd like to devote 4 more years of hard work to strengthening education, putting a permanent lid on property taxes, recruiting new jobs, and making college affordable for all. Rehire us, and we will.
Why did you say what you said in that ad about never running ever again for any office?
I try to do my own work, whether it's speeches or including the advertisements that we ran. I always want to speak in my own words if I can. I wrote that ad probably 10 months, Brian, before the election. I always knew what the final statement and summation would be. And I suppose I said it because I wanted people to know that we're not on the make for anything else, that we really sincerely want a chance to improve our state, and that we'd give every bit of effort to that. And maybe to reassure people they wouldn't have to, deal with us anymore after then.
Are you still of the same mind, no matter how often people are writing these days, oh, we think we're going to get him back in the 2012 race for president?
I am, for many reasons, but yes, I am.
Not going to go back on it under any circumstance.
I've painted myself in about as well, I think, as a person can. I'd say I've got lots of reasons for it. I suppose both negative, but I want to concentrate on the positive reasons, and that has to do with doing what we said we'd do. We have made a very determined effort for getting on 6 years now to tell people in our state about the big changes we wanted to make, all the things we'd like to do, and we are almost religious about trying to live up to those words. And I would like to complete 8 years in that fashion, and have I hope the citizens of my state feel that, well, here for a while a group of people came and went from public service who meant exactly what they said and really didn't have any other agenda.
So what are the negatives?
I wouldn't subject myself or my family to what I see as the savagery of presidential politics. If that's cowardly, then it is, but I just really not for me. There's a lot about the way people campaign for president right now that I find a little superficial, and but I just I think principally that I've hired on for 4 years. I'm duty bound to fill out those 4 years, and it's a very fulfilling thing to work on, by the way, if you can see progress being made, and so far we have.
So when did you decide, and the last thing I read was that you went to 92 Indiana counties 3 times. Did you?
Minimum, yes.
3 times to 92 different counties?
When I first ran, yes, and I've never really stopped traveling at all. I travel all the time. But yes, we went to each of our counties. I remember we said, well, we'll cover them all, lap one in the first 100 days, and we did it in about 98.
How'd you do it?
Principally in an Indiana-built RV that...
was it built up in Elkhart?
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was, and pretty much your entry-level model, but sort of a rolling fraternity house of 2 young guys and me. That was it. But on the road all the time. We went to all those places where people say, quote, no one ever comes here, and stayed overnight in people's homes, which I still do. I stayed overnight in Yorktown, Indiana, just last week, and probably about the 100th family that's allowed me to mooch. But it's just been our MO, and I've learned a lot. I can name a whole list of issues or problems that I first heard about doing that we later were able to go do something to solve or address.
Give us an example and personalize it if you can.
Okay, sure. I remember the bar stool I was sitting on in Clay City, Indiana, with a couple of single moms when they told me how terrible a job the state had done for years helping them enforce their rights to child support. And I went back and dug into it and found out that's right, that some court would award a mom, or maybe a dad, money, and only 50 cents of the dollar ever got collected on average. And so we've worked really hard on that, and we're pushing 60 or 61 cents now. I remember the diner in Muncie when I found out about how many kids were waiting on the autism for treatment for autism on a waiting list, sometimes for years. Still a problem, but we've done a lot about it. I remember the highway worker who first told me, he said, it's a joke. We don't have a third the money we need to build all these roads people have been promised. It was at a golf tournament out not too far from where you grew up, some charity outing, and I went and checked, and he was right, and we went and did something big about that. So, I just recently saw a man I admire a whole lot, Lamar Alexander, former governor and now a senator from Tennessee, and I told him early on in this adventure what I was doing, and he said, that's exactly what you should do. He said, it'll probably make you a more successful candidate, but it will definitely make you a better governor, and he was right.
Let's quickly go through the different things you've done. Monongahela, Pennsylvania, you were born. What year did you come to Indiana?
Family arrived in Indiana in 58 or 9, I guess. I was about 10 years old. We
lived where?
We had lived around the South, actually. I never lived in Pennsylvania. Just Mom wanted to hatch me in the hometown hospital. Same, for the record, same hospital room as Joe Montana. That's where the athletic resemblance probably stopped. But we lived in Tennessee and Georgia, and moved to the Indianapolis area when I was 10.
Went to high school where? North
Central High School. Certainly at that time, I believe one of the handful of best public high schools in America. We were also fortunate to go there. It showed me that you can have uncompromising excellence in the public schools if we have the right elements.
College?
Princeton University.
Law school?
Night school, on and off, finished at Georgetown while working out here.
First thing you did in politics?
Volunteer, lowest person on the totem pole for a campaign for Bill Ruckelshaus.
68?
Ran, yes, unsuccessfully, close race for the Senate in our home state, and then went on to renown in the Nixon administration, resigned in the Saturday Night Massacre.
What were you doing?
First head of EPA.
You worked for him when he was first at Ruckelshaus, when he was first head of EPA?
No, just when he ran unsuccessfully for office.
Okay. And then what was next?
Well, I finished school. I fell in with the then boy mayor of Indianapolis, Dick Lugar, now our distinguished senior senator, and the finest public servant I ever expect to see. And he was an idealistic and an active, a very active young mayor at a time when the cities were at the forefront of really of American consciousness, and he was making great transformations in my hometown. And I went to work for him a couple summers, and he talked me into sticking around for a little while, namely 13 years.
Now, you just turned 60.
I did.
So how old were you when you started working for him?
20.
And then what? After you worked for him as mayor, what was next?
He got elected to the Senate, and I'd been part of all that. He asked me to come along, and I did, and I spent the next 8 years organizing his affairs here.
Working for him at the Senate.
That's right.
And what did you learn about all this business when you were in the Senate?
Oh, how patient and how difficult one has to be in the legislative process. Incidentally, although I'm so incredibly grateful that great people like Dick Lugar, Lamar Alexander serve in the Congress, it would probably never be for me. The difficulty of making a major difference requires, as I say, great skill and great patience. But I saw that it can be done, and he did.
What year did you leave Senator Lugar?
In '84. I was on my way home. By that time, Sherry and I had 3 girls, and were very intent on raising them in Indiana. I had never really expected to stick around Washington as long as I did, but Senator Lugar was a very persuasive person. I really felt every day working for him was a day of graduate school as well as a day of work. And but I got a call from friends in the Reagan White House, and they asked me to go down there, and the next 3 years were spent there.
Doing what?
I was assigned to work with sort of the federal system, so governors, mayors, local officials. I had at least some background in local administration. Later on, they added the political office, and so I supported the president in those 2 ways.
So that came to an end what year?
87.
Then what?
I went straight. I went home, went into private life, where I thought I would stay till the rest of my working days, and had great experience for the next more or less 15 years.
Doing what for whom?
I was CEO of a research organization called the Hudson Institute for a few years, and then, and as I sometimes say, malpracticed some law on the side part-time. The legal profession was spared the embarrassment of my services for very long. And then one day the phone rang, as phones do, and it was Eli Lilly and Company.
Based in Indianapolis?
Yes, and with what I consider the single biggest piece of many good pieces of good fortune that ever came my way, and I went to work over there for 11 years.
Back to politics, in what year?
The phone rang in December of 2000, and it was an inquiry about coming to be part of the incoming Bush administration, which I accepted.
You mean the George Bush administration?
Yes. So.
And you accepted? Did they offer you a job as director of OMB right there?
Not initially. The first call was about a different job, which I said, "Oh, thanks, but no thanks. I'm productively occupied here, and you can get someone better for that." Then they called back, and I went home and told my wife, I said, "Sherry, now we have a problem. Now they're calling about the one job they've got I'd probably be interested in," and that was OMB.
Here's a piece of tape of you testifying back on September the 6th, 2001. It's not very long. We'll just watch this.
The president is the biggest spender, hands down, in this town. The administration, with its tax cut, is the biggest spender, hands down. That's money that's being spent, going out of the Treasury. So when we're talking about spending, big spenders, perhaps the administration ought to look into a mirror. Now, what's going to be done here? We're facing a crisis.
That wasn't much from you, but I remember watching that back then. You were, at the time, being called the Blade, and if I remember right, you were trying to cut spending.
Yeah.
But Bob Byrd, among others, told you, not on my watch.
I still own that tie, by the way. I had it on the other day. Well, I'd have been curious to see what I said. I know what I hope I said, which was, respectfully, Senator Byrd, when you let people keep money and spend it themselves, that's not government spending. So I would have taken exception to his characterization, but well, there were a number of interesting encounters back in those days. I enjoyed jousting around a little bit with members of the legislative branch.
But you got beat up pretty badly back then when you wanted to cut. I mean, you would go up there and testify, and they were in your face. I remember watching it. What was your reaction when you were going through that?
I try to take it in some good humor. There's an element of stagecraft in what they do, particularly when you folks are there, the cameras are rolling, so you sort of discount a little bit for that. But it was said, I know at the time, that I was a little more combative and answering back than some folks do. I mean, it wasn't, Brian, I remember thinking at the time, by that time I wasn't a spring chicken or a kid anymore, and I didn't intend to stick around Washington. And so I certainly didn't want to do anything that would be counterproductive for the administration. But I probably felt a little less constrained than some folks do. If they were talking rot, sometimes I told them so, and really argued back because I didn't particularly. I wasn't looking for fights, but I didn't particularly care. I wasn't ever expecting, to be up there lobbying or asking favors from someone I might have ticked off.
During George Bush's presidency for 8 years, the debt increased $5 trillion. He did not veto a bill until September, I think, of 2006. And in the end, had less vetoes than anybody, I think, since Franklin Pierce or something like that. Did you ever recommend a veto that he said no to? And why did he not use the veto to keep the spending down?
Mm-hmm. I didn't. Came close a time or two. But I generally felt that if a bill got all the way to the president that was a candidate for a veto, it meant that we somehow we as a staff had failed. So I didn't. Now, later on, I certainly saw some that I probably would have made such a recommendation about, but I think it was long term a bad thing in multiple ways. That it's interesting, that President Bush was attacked so relentlessly for being somehow divisive, and yet he didn't veto bills. He was constantly trying to work with the Congress. You won't have any, I bet you could ransack the C-SPAN archives, you won't find a foot of tape in which he disparaged somebody personally or called someone a name, and just one of those ironies. But yeah, I think certainly in the rearview mirror, a tougher position on spending would have served him well, and later on the Republican Party will.
There's a point of controversy back in the early days when Lawrence Lindsay was asked how much it would cost in Iraq, and he said $200 billion, and everybody said that's a bunch of baloney. And you were in the middle of all that, and you defended it. How does it look from this point of view?
Well, I've got a very thick file to confirm what actually I said at the time. We were asked, we at OMB were asked to cost the first supplemental to pay for the Iraq War. And it's very, very clear on the historical record what the assumptions were. We weren't war fighters, we were estimators. So we said, okay, what kind of war are you going to fight and how long are you going to be there? And the question was, how much would it cost to defeat the Iraqi army and be out 6 months later? And we gave a number which turned out to be very much on the mark. Larry had a different, more macro approach. He just looked at past conflicts, compared them to GDP, and said, well, it could be $200 billion, but this wasn't going to be World War II or Vietnam, or certainly not. That wasn't the supposition at the time.
We're up to about $700 billion at least. What's your opinion on all that?
Well, I think that I'm not going to second guess anybody's decision either at the outset or along the way. I will just say that it's had profound consequences. I think it's the single biggest reason why the last election was lost. Just the fatigue of it all and the it was turning around, but not in time to really make it obvious. And $700 billion is a lot of money. But you know, I was there. There's some things that people so easily forget. I was in many meetings after September 11th, National Security Council, Homeland Security Council. Only question was, where and when will the next attack be? There was no doubt in anyone's mind, and no one there would have ever dared to forecast we'd go another 8 years without an American life lost to terrorism here. And we all know the history of all the intelligence all over the world that believed there were weapons of mass destruction inside Iraq. And so people should be a little more charitable, I think. Try to put yourself in the position of the decision makers who had to make that very difficult call.
What day did you leave the OMB job?
June 6th, 03.
Why?
Family, principally. I had been commuting to the job. We weren't about to uproot the girls. There were 3 in high school at the time that this all came up. And I had missed most of high school for my youngest, Maggie. And so I had to decide whether to serve out the term. We were approaching the point in any White House where I think people have to ask themselves, if I'm going to go, I should go now. If you get any closer to the next election, you really owe it to the president, I think, to step out, not be breaking somebody new in that year. So I decided to go home, went and asked for my honorable discharge.
What'd you do then?
Then, and it was in sequence, I turned my attention, having made that decision, I turned my attention to these, I won't call them friends, I'll just say well-meaning people back home who were after me to become a candidate for governor. And so I made that decision after first deciding about coming home at all.
Just a couple of days ago, you gave a budget address. This is a little clip from that on June 1st.
If you're a taxpayer, ask your legislators to put the general public interest first and say no to the special interests who demand money we just don't have right now. When some lobbyist or legislator promises more spending on some favorite cause or project, ask him, which of my taxes are you proposing to raise, and why do you want to do that? Across America, people are asking how Indiana has kept its head above water while everyone else is drowning. It's because we're Hoosiers, of course. We have this quaint custom of not spending money we don't have. If we keep our common sense now, we'll get through this very tough patch and come out ahead of other states.
What's a Hoosier?
Well, we debate that, you know. We debate the etymology of the word, and no one knows for sure. But in my judgment, it is a person of basic decency and compassion and common sense. That's the way people tend to be. You know this. And we think you represent us pretty well, by the way. So folks across America want to know what a Hoosier is. I'd say look at Lamb. You pretty much get the picture.
I've seen a definition of a Hoosier as a hick.
Yeah, I know that in Missouri, this is the parlance. I learned that reading a biography of Jesse James. So it goes back there somewhere, but to us it has a more positive connotation.
So the circumstances for you in this state, I've heard somebody say, and I've tried to find the actual figure, that Indiana is only one of 3 states with a surplus?
Well, I don't know how many are left, but there aren't too many. We still have about 10% of a year in reserve. And that's only been because we've been extraordinarily careful about spending all along the way. Revenues dropped 8% last year. You can't take too many years like that and still have a savings account, but we do.
And you say in your message that you're going to increase or going to decrease them at 2.5%, but still increase education. Well,
you set priorities just as any family or business does, and that's our suggestion. I hope that we can get the legislature to go along with it. You know, elsewhere in that speech, I put up maps that showed how many states, more than 2/3, that have cut education, sometimes very drastically, and we haven't had to do that. I put up a map that showed how many states have raised taxes. It's getting close to 40. We haven't had to do that. I've said to my fellow Hoosiers that in business, the strongest businesses tend to improve their position, their market share maybe, in tough times. Weaker competitors tend to fall back. And I want our state to think about it the same. If we're able to keep services up and taxes down while everyone else is going the other way, businesses will come to Indiana more often when they're ready to invest again.
Current population of Indiana,
6.3 million.
where does it fit among the 50 states in size?
About 16th or 17th.
In the legislature, the Senate House made up of Democrats, Republicans. What's the break?
Yeah, we're 6-3 Democratic. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean the state I didn't mean the U.S. legislature. I mean in your state house.
Yeah, the Senate is Republican by a fairly significant margin. The House is Democratic by 2 seats. So we have divided government.
When you read about your history as governor, everybody writes about 2 things, and you know what they are. I won't even. You tell me what they are.
The toll road and daylight savings time.
All right, start with the toll road. Where did you get the idea to sell the toll road for $3.5 billion? And what toll road is it?
We have, across the northern part of the state, the Indiana Toll Road for 50 years. It's about 157 miles. Crosses Indiana from border to border and connects to the Chicago Skyway. You know, as I've often said, I didn't get up one morning and say, boy, wouldn't it be fun to, lease the toll road? I got up many days. I told you about that highway worker who said that there's a sham here, there's a fraud. People have been promised roads we'll never build. And he was right. And so I stayed up a lot of nights thinking, how are we going to solve that problem? The nation is now aware that we have a big infrastructure issue. The president rightly tried to center his so-called stimulus bill on infrastructure. I wish more of it had dealt with that, as opposed to what Congress did, but he was right about that. Well, Indiana got a 3-year head start in this problem. And we looked at more than 30 options for how you might find more money to invest in our future. And I finally realized we could do the other 29 and probably not have enough to really address our problem. I thought I'd try what we did try. We had an auction. Our timing was good. A lot of bidders. And just an unbelievable bid. We got it probably 3 times what this toll road was losing money. You say, why? Politicians ran it. And many people are now writing that the successful bidders overpaid. Well, I wish them well. I hope they get their money back. But Indiana got almost $4 billion, free and clear. Not $1 of taxes, not $1 of borrowing, and we're reinvesting all of it. And so in our future, and it was absolutely the best thing probably we'll ever do. No matter how many other reforms we pull off, I don't know what we can do that will touch this. The benefits will be there for generations, and they'll pay off. Will also come in the jobs that locate in Indiana because of that infrastructure. Somebody asked me about, was it a good deal? I said, it's the best deal since Manhattan for the beads, except this time the natives won.
And what has happened? Who bought it, first of all, or who leased it?
Yeah. Well, an Australian bank organized the financing, and a Spanish operating company. See, this is very conventional in Europe. It strikes some Americans as new, but there isn't anything remotely new about this. Some of the earliest roads in Indiana were privately built toll roads, and all over the world today there are many others. So these people know what they're doing. By the way, we not only got $4 billion, they're putting billions into the road. This road had no electronic tolling, and probably wouldn't have for another 10 or 20 years in political hands, but it got it within the first few months of their operation.
And so what's happened to the fee? The fees that people pay?
It's a regulated utility. They can't raise the tolls except under the terms of the contract, basically limited to inflation.
You think they got a good deal?
Oh,
not you.
Yeah, you'll have to ask them. The world financial press says Indiana took them to the cleaners. My mother will come down from heaven and smack me if I act like I'm gloating. I will just say that we were very, very pleased with what happened and with the benefits from investing this money.
We've got a couple of clips here. I want you to explain what these are, but this is one where the toll road comes up, and you tell me what we're looking at after we finish it.
Bill, it's a pleasure.
I'm not a Mitch man.
Well, that's all right. Not everybody is.
I'm not a Mitch man.
Anything in particular?
Huh?
Was it anything in
I
particular?
just wondered what we're going to give away next.
We didn't give away a thing. I got you the best deal you ever get.
Where we're going to be in 10 years from now on our highways. What's our money?
You're gonna in the ground. You're gonna have 4 billion of roads you would never have had, and you didn't pay a nickel of gas tax for it. Would you like to pay a triple gas tax? Would you like to not build the roads? That's the choice we had. We could not build the road. We could triple the gas tax, or we could borrow a lot of money, and Kyle could try to pay it back the rest of his life.
Now, Kyle's still too poor.
Yeah, so I didn't think that was a good idea. And don't let anybody tell you we gave anything away. We got $4 billion, and you didn't have to pay a nickel for it. So I appreciate your point of view. And listen, I respect your point of view. Okay.
I'm just not a Mitch man.
What do politicians mean when they say, I respect your point of view?
Well, the gentleman lacks some information, but you know, I respect anybody who's an active enough citizen to pay attention to these things and take a point of view.
What were we watching there?
You were watching a piece of a long series of reality shows. Some filmmakers got wind of what I was doing, traveling the state, and they asked to come along and just record it, and whatever would happen would happen. I thought, I humored them. I said, as long as you don't spend much money, because this is going to bomb. And secondly, I said, I don't want anybody to feel like a prop. The first time somebody feels like, you know, this is some kind of stunt, then you're out of there. No one ever did. And so there were something like 20-some shows, and you just see...
Where'd they put them?
Oh, on cable stations, I guess. Eventually it became so popular they had to put them on Sunday mornings next to the talk shows and things like that.
Let's look at another one just so we can get an idea.
First thing you need to know about this is it wasn't my idea, only in the most indirect sense. I am the one who said that if I was going to become a candidate for public office, I wanted to do things very differently. Spend all my time on the road with the people of Indiana, and more than anything, be authentic. Say just what I thought, be just who I am, let the people decide.
Are you Mitch Daniels?
I am.
Nice to meet you. I'm Janice Whittick.
Hey Janice, how you doing?
I'm
So you
fine.
actually know who we are, huh?
No, I don't.
Still, when some of my old friends asked if they could come along with a movie camera and later if they could make a show out of it, I thought it was the craziest idea I ever heard. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you. You're quite welcome. I think you know my husband?
Well, I guess I don't know. But if I don't, I guess I'm about to. So,
What's your last name?
Daniels.
Daniels. Okay.
For those who watch this show, for better or for worse, you'll get a close-up, first-hand look, unplanned and unscripted.
Did she really not know who you were?
Oh yeah, it happened all the time for a while. You know, those were from 03 and 04. Nobody knew who the heck I was for a long time. So there were a lot of funny moments like that.
And you say you didn't think this up. This wasn't your idea.
No, I thought it was, as I said, I thought it was probably a bad idea, but it was in keeping with something we were trying to do. I remember now that I said in that little intro, if we're gonna do this whole thing, I wanted to try it in a different way and try to put the personal contact back in politics, get it off the tarmacs and TV out of the TV studios, and that's just been our practice. I want to stress, Brian, that it wasn't that we did it on a sustained basis for 16 months. It wasn't a one weekend listening tour thing. That I never really stopped. I mean, I've traveled as often as I can, consistent with the job. You know, I was unemployed then, so it was easy to travel every day. But even now, as often as I can. Now it's a lot of times on my motorcycle now.
I'll come back to that, but you were the first Republican to win in 16 years in Indiana.
That's right.
First time around, you won by how many percentage points?
About 6.
Second time around, Barack Obama won the state. First Democrat to win the state presidency since '64, Lyndon Johnson?
That's correct.
And he won by a point. You won by how big?
18.
How did that happen? And why did he win?
I think President Obama earned his victory in our state. I mean, first of all, he invested a ton of his own time and an incredible amount of money. I think it helped him that we had a competitive primary. Indiana hadn't had one probably since Bobby Kennedy won in '68. And because we have a late primary, it's usually over. But because of the unusual dynamics of the nomination contest, we had a terrific primary. It was great, really. A lot of excitement. Finally, our state got paid some attention to. So he had a little bit of a head start from all of that, and then they never let up, and give him credit. It was a hard-earned victory.
The motorcycle.
Yeah.
How much do you use it?
Well, I'm using it more and more. I mean, I've ridden them since I was a kid. There were some, Sherry threw me off them for a while when the girls were little, but it's something I enjoy, and each year I've sort of pressed it out there a little further, expecting sooner or later someone come along and say, hey, this is not very gubernatorial, but it hasn't happened. People seem to accept it, and gives you a way to have a little fun in the job.
What's the farthest you've ridden since you've been the governor, and you take a security detail everywhere you go?
Oh, hundreds of miles. We've done days, we might have multiple stops and ride a couple hundred miles in between. The security, I am a little problem for the security folks. They've not had to follow somebody into saloons and all the impromptu stops that we make, and let alone motorcycle travel. But they've put up with it pretty well, I think.
Here's another clip on something called cow bingo.
Yeah.
Let's watch.
We're all waiting expectantly for a cow to unload on the right bingo square. You know about this? This is called cow pie bingo, and some lucky guy, and I hope it's me, wins $5,000 if the cow deposits on your square.
What's your number?
814. I got 13 here. I got 12. Keep an eye on her tail. If it moves, let me know.
I'll give you a heads up.
Incidentally, who's the judge? What if it falls on a line somewhere, huh?
Okay, it falls on the line.
Yeah? Is that a foul?
Weigh
Or,
it. No.
so to
We
speak?
scoop it out with a little trowel.
Cut it and weigh it? Really?
And we weigh it. The heaviest part wins.
Oh, did it do it?
It's going.
You mean we have a winner?
Were you really asleep there?
Yeah.
How many
This
of
is
those,
a great way to raise money for charity, by the way. It's low overhead.
how many of those people that you're hanging around out there know that you got a degree from Princeton?
Oh, I don't know.
And is it work to be in that environment in Indiana?
Is it work?
Compared, you've lived the high life. You've been, you've been
Oh, it's
with
a lot
those-
more.
you've
It's
been
a
with
lot
all
more
those
comfortable. A lot more.
intellectuals
Well, I know that this mode is very comfortable for me. It's the one thing I enjoy most about the job. People say, do you like the job? I'll usually say I like the work and I can tolerate the life. But there's one thing about the life I like, and that is, particularly now, and I do have this title temporarily. Anywhere I go, people do want to talk, and it means something to them if you spend a little time with them. It's a wonderful gift to have just for a few years. I've had so many grown men, let's say, I've never talked to anyone important before. And you want to go, come on, Brian, it's just you and me. But then you stop and think, no, when he gets home or back to work, he can tell people. I don't care if he says, I told that SOB what I thought. It's a moment for him, and I like doing it. And I know that not everyone would. Staying overnight in people's houses, I've had a lot of people say to me, I couldn't do that.
Here's one of these reality shows talking to some good old boys.
Okay.
You running for the governor?
Yeah, not till next year. I just worked for George Bush for the last 2.5 years, so.
Poor guy, see my sign there?
Where, which one?
Bush lied, troops died, and the rich got richer with the tax cut.
Yeah, well, who do you think would have done a little better? Would you like Gore over there? Would you like Gore in charge the last couple of years?
Well, that's hypothetical, but that's who I voted
Well, it
for.
was pretty close.
He won.
It could have happened. Nah, he didn't win.
Chandler's my name, David Chandler.
David, I'm
I'll
Mitch.
shake your hand, but
Well, I'll shake your hand.
I always like to.
Well, a man's entitled to his opinion. I respect your opinion.
I'm the Democrat precinct committeeman for our township.
Well, then good. You're in there doing what
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's
so
all right.
Like that and everything.
Listen, I like people who get involved in it.
And
I am tickled to death that you stopped, because if you hadn't stopped, I'd have talked about you. Because listen,
Well,
listen, if you get to be governor, I want you to remember this place.
I will remember this place. I will.
We will call you.
I've been back that place several times.
You have?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Well, because I said I would. And, I kind of got,
Any of those good old boys vote for you?
well, hard telling. But I'll tell you, old David there became a recognizable figure around the state. I was asked about him many other places.
The last thing I saw, 69% popular in the state of Indiana right now. Is that true?
Well, somebody found that, yeah.
How can you resist all these people? Here's a National Review, big cover story. National Review, The Blade, they call you here.
Isn't that the most hideous picture you ever saw in your life?
And they're all talking about this business of running again, for president. How can you resist it when you're popular in the state and have a surplus? And
My hometown paper had somebody ask, had I seen that and what did I think? And I said, I've been having trouble killing this presidential talk. That picture will take care of it. No one would vote for someone who looked like that. I just, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
one more little video. Let's watch.
Okay.
When those big tall tennis shoes, like the
Oh,
tall tennis shoes.
those were truly dorky. That was
Dad.
one time you went over the dork line. I mean,
Dad goes over the dork line every day. he's officially cut off in this conversation.
I don't have it. I don't.
that happens a lot.
Who were they?
That's the apple of my eye, young Margaret Daniels. Now just had her 23rd birthday, but that was a few years ago. I think she was with me because it was primary day, possibly, of 04. But something else a little different with us. You'll almost never see Sherry or one of the girls with me. It's my job. That's what I do. We had this discussion at the very beginning. I almost didn't run because Sherry had great misgivings. She likes private life and she likes our privacy, and the family comes first with her. And I came this close to not running for that reason. But I said, look, honey, we don't have to do this like other people. I will never ask you, let alone pressure you to take part in any event. And I haven't. I've kept that for 6 years. And she is, when she does things of her own choosing, people just love her to death because she's so non-political. She's the queen of the Indiana State Fair, basically, Brian. By the way, she is the defending champion once removed in the cow milking contest and the watermelon seed spitting contest.
And where did you meet her?
She was a young working girl when I was working for Mayor Lugar, and I went to Washington with things sort of up in the air, and after about a few months she gave me the ultimatum, and fortunately I surrendered.
How many years you been married?
31.
4 daughters?
Yes.
What are they all doing? How old are they?
23, 25, 27, 29 now. And they are 3 are in Indiana, 3 working girls there, and young Margaret that you just saw a little slice of is just finishing her first year working in New York City in what's left of the investment banking world.
You gave a speech on May 9th at Butler University. Where is Butler, and why did you give the speech? Because you talk a lot about Butler being an exciting place for you.
Butler's a great school. It's very close to the governor's residence. It's on the north side of Indianapolis, and a fine academic school, and a great basketball tradition. When I was a kid, about the only recreation we could afford, I told that crowd, was my buddies and I, you could buy a season ticket for almost nothing. So I've been going to watch their basketball teams for a long time. I don't go looking for commencement speeches because I find them challenging to say something innovative but I couldn't say no to Butler.
It's one of the things you talk about earlier is you talk about Tony Hinkle, who was he?
Tony Hinkle was the legendary multi-sport coach at Butler for decades, but most associated with the basketball program.
Talk about his philosophy. It comprises simple and timeless principles: humility, unity, and thankfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that before you gave this speech?
There was an article in the Indianapolis paper this spring. I sort of knew that there was a sort of a code around the program, but there was an interesting article, and the minute I saw it, I thought, oh, and it was called the Butler Way. That's the way that it's referred to. And I thought, oh, well, that'd be a good point of departure for the speech.
Here's some of what you said. It's odd that I read to you what you said, but I want to get it on the record, and then you can react. As a generation, you are off to an excellent start. You have taken the first savvy step on the road to distinction, which is to follow a weak act. I wish I could claim otherwise, but we baby boomers are likely to be remembered by history for our numbers and little else, at least little else that is admirable. Where did that come from?
Oh, it's just a conviction of mine. I may have overstated a little bit for effect, but and by the way, if one reads the whole speech, there were many, many qualifiers here about the hazards of generalization and all the rest. But
something moved you to do this.
Yes, I see a contrast between frankly the values that have made America what it is, the values somewhat summed up in the Butler Way, and those that too often have dominated American life during what we think of as the baby boom era. And I illustrated it here, but I don't believe we have done as well as we could have. For instance, in the debt we're passing on to these young people is going to be a very, very difficult thing for them to manage. And we could have shown more political maturity in the way we financed the entitlements that we've committed ourselves to and that sort of thing. So I was urging them to be less self-absorbed, think more about others, certainly think more about the future, less about today. And it may have been a little too strong a judgment, but it is in general, I think, a point I believe in.
We were pampered, meaning the baby boomers. We were pampered in ways no children in human history would recognize. With minor exceptions, we have lived in blissfully fortunate times. The numbers of us who perished in plagues and famine or in combat were tiny in comparison to previous generations of Americans, to say nothing of humanity elsewhere. All our lives, it has been about us. We were the me generation. We wore T-shirts that said, "If it feels good, do it." The year of my high school commencement, a hit song featured the immortal lyric, "Sha-la-la-la-la, live for today." As a group, we have been self-centered, self-absorbed, self-indulgent, and all too often just plain selfish. Our current baby boomer president has written 2 eloquent, erudite books, both about himself. Expand on that.
What's left?
How much of that does that resemble you?
Well, I've probably been guilty from time to time. Which of us hasn't? I guess I'm just saying, with all the caveats that generalizations should always come equipped with, that I do believe that the next generation ought to aspire to do a little better in this regard, and to be more mindful of the future. I mean, just look at what we've just come through, Brian. The overspending and overconsumption, the undersaving, pretty obviously has not worked out well for a lot of individuals, and certainly not for the overall economy. And I think there's a lesson in that. And I was simply trying to say, try to learn from those things where your elders might have come up a little short.
Did you see what Rich Jackson, the editor of the Porter County Post-Tribune, said about this speech?
No.
He says, as he launches presidential bid, that's the headline, message, you suck. And he's talking about, well, he says, mind you, Mitch was talking to a generation of college students who had their college education paid for by what the good governor deems the biggest heap of dung generation ever to traipse American sod. He goes on to say some kinder things. Your reaction?
Well, he's entitled to his point of view. I mean, there were an awful lot of people that reacted very positively to it too. That's why next year I probably better just discipline myself not to take any commencements, because unless you want to get up and spout platitudes, there's always the risk that you'll say something that's a little too original for your own good.
When did you know that this had struck a chord Because there's lots of copy out there on this.
Yeah, well, when it started showing up in magazines and ricocheting around the internet and elsewhere, but
did you write it yourself?
Yes. Can't blame it on anybody else. I write them all.
As a generation, we did tend to live for today. We have spent more and saved less than any previous Americans. Year after year, regardless which party we picked to lead the country, we ran up deficits that have multiplied the debt you and your children will be paying off for your entire working lives. Far more burdensome to you mathematically, we voted ourselves increasing levels of Social Security pensions and Medicare health care benefits, but never summoned the political maturity to put those programs on anything resembling a sound actuarial footing. Get back to what I was asking earlier. Why is it that George W. Bush, who was supposed to be a conservative, I guess, may you tell us if he was or not, allowed his Republican Congress to run up the numbers? Why didn't he veto?
Well, I mean, it's a question best put to him. I would just say that so many factors at play. I'm always tend to be charitable and sympathetic toward whoever's president. They have multiple pressures on them all the time. For instance, far and away the president's first job and that president's first priority was the defense of America and the protection against another 9/11 or something worse. And I think that many times he probably chose not to have fights on other issues where he might have in pursuit of trying to keep his main objective intact.
By the way, I never asked you again, but you never told us why on the time change, the daylight savings thing, why was that such a big deal?
I did my best to duck you on that.
What did you do?
Well, we just got in step with the rest of America. We were the last state, except one, I guess, that didn't change clocks when the rest did. And it wasn't the biggest deal, but it played havoc with certain businesses. I mean, increasingly businesses are wired together, tied together, and working across national and even global markets. And it was a problem, and it was not without significant cost that people said, what the heck time is it in Indiana this month? Broadcasting is a perfect example. You have your computers. I had people said, look, my biggest customer has to reprogram his computer twice a year just to deal with me. One day he's going to say, I want to work with somebody in Ohio. So, but it had a lot of symbolic importance to a lot of people, and to some folks, I think it sort of summed up the fact that this was going to be an era of change, and change is a little difficult for some people. But
how many counties still are on Central Time?
About 10. The two corners, the corner around Chicago, which basically has to be with Chicago, and the southwest corner, all the rest is Eastern. That basically didn't change. What did change was that now the eastern part does stay in sync. Well, we all stay in sync.
Another paragraph from your speech. Our irresponsibility went well beyond the financial realm. Our parents formed families and kept them intact even though difficulty, through difficulty for the sake of the kids. To us, parental happiness came first. We often divorced at the first unpleasantness and increasingly just gave birth to children without the nuisance of marriage. Commitment cramps one's style, don't you know? What's different about your 4 daughters than the boomer generation?
Well, we'll have to see how they choose to live their lives.
Hey, what do you see in them that's different?
Well, I see a lot of their mother, and that's the best thing I could tell you about them. They'll make their own choices, and I'll support them, whatever those are. I hope that the 2, soon to be 3 marriages that have begun in our family will last for life, or certainly as long as there are any children. I have enormous admiration and sympathy for single parents. I think I told you how hard we've worked on things like child support. But it just remains an empirical fact. This isn't some sort of a moral judgment. You could make it that, but it's just an empirical fact that the children of America and so many other problems, poverty in America, every social pathology that tears at your heart would be so much less a problem if we had much higher rates of intact families. So This isn't something you can legislate. This isn't something you should ever scold people about. But you can hope and encourage people to be very, very careful about this, and especially when children become involved, to try to think about placing them ahead of your own happiness if you possibly can.
What are you going to say when you change your mind about running for president after we have all this stuff on tape?
Well, Brian, like I say, I've been painting myself in. You've helped me put another coat of paint down today. In another old song from our era, it ain't me, babe, that you're looking for. But I hope that maybe I can be of some use. Our party needs obviously a lot of work. It needs to think itself, look in it inwardly, and think about how it can speak more meaningfully to the problems of today and to the Americans of today and to the young people of today specifically. Maybe I can be a little part of that. You don't have to be a candidate to do that. I can tell you this, in our state, Republicans, we always say, are the party of purpose. We are the party that for 5 years now, every year has made change after change after change. We have brought a host of improvements and reforms that we haven't talked about here. And it just says to me that being the sort of political organization that really stands for and earns the right to represent people is not the province of one party or the other. And so maybe I can help a little bit, but not being the front man.
Governor Mitch Daniels, well, thank you, but we also want to end with just another one of these little reality clips from your earlier campaigns.
I just want to say good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations. You part of the company here?
I just got hired today. My first day on the job.
You just got hired today?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Good for you. What did you get hired to do?
Accountant.
Accountant? You know these guys? He just got hired today. This is Bob. Yeah. Meet Bob. This is your new coworker.
Nice to meet you.
I'll shake your hand or everybody. I'd like to get a picture with you.
Absolutely. After you meet Bob.
I know Bob.
It's his first date. You are?
Latoya.
Latoya. Very good seeing you. So they didn't take your picture. Where? Scoot over.
Over here, man.
Now, right here. I'm in here. There he is. Here, I'll tell you what. You sit still. I'll come back here. And take good care of my new friend, Bob. Wherever Bob. Huh? I guess Bob went to work. I don't know. I don't see him here. Come here. They all want to meet you. Come here a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob. See?
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.